Well, we thought Kentucky's roster was set, and then one of the state's own decided to enter the transfer portal.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be discussing Travis Perry entering the transfer portal. This was definitely the best decision for both parties involved. I'm going to tell you why on today's episode, as well as why Otega Oweh needs to come back to Kentucky, and we'll take a look at the current state of the roster as a whole. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. You can download the Game Time app. You can create an account. You can use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you're watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. And if you were listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Travis Perry, the four-star guard here out of Lyon County, has decided he is going to enter the transfer portal, and I think this is clearly the best-case scenario for both parties involved. First and foremost, we'll get to some of the statistics. He averaged 2.7 points per game while shooting 36.6% from three. The 6'1" guard is officially out after playing 9.7 minutes per contest. Those stats you can find either on Sports Reference or via Nick Rush over at KSR. Another note here from KSR, Perry broke the long-time KHSAA scoring record during his junior season at Lyon County. The following year, he guided the Lions to a Sweet 16 title at Rupp Arena. He was named Mr. Kentucky Basketball after beating Trent Noah in Harlan County. In the title game, he finished his career with more than 5,000 points, and he was the only player that Mark Pope was able to hold over from John Calipari's final recruiting class in Lexington. Travis Perry, I think a lot of people obviously support him almost even more than other players on the roster because of the fact that he's a Kentucky kid, because of what he's meant at the high school ranks, and it's a shame to see him leave. But knowing what Kentucky's situation is and understanding what he wants to be able to do with his college career, this is absolutely the best case scenario. With Denzel Aberdeen in, there was going to be a shortage of minutes at point guard. That's just the reality. You are going to have Jalen Lowe carrying a heavy load there, Cullen Chandler, Jasper Johnson, and now with Denzel Aberdeen in, you didn't necessarily have to slide Johnson or Chandler up a ton. You could let Aberdeen kind of be that backup point guard, if you will, and Perry was going to be third or fourth string, possibly even the fifth guy that you look to in rotations to run point and to run stuff in that backcourt as he did a season ago. Injuries, I think, will play a factor into any college basketball season, right? But you can't necessarily account for that. With him being gone, it's not necessarily a panic for Kentucky because, again, you've got four other guys, I think, that you can operate there at that point guard spot. And then also for Perry, losing his minutes, I don't necessarily think is a bad thing for UK for reasons we'll get to when it comes to shooting guard here in a second. But Perry would have been fourth string, guys. He would have been fourth string. Aberdeen is taking more of his minutes here now that he's stepping in. It's better for Travis Perry to go ahead and go and try and find somewhere else to go and play here, whether that's still in the Power Six, whether that's maybe somewhere else regionally. He's not the player that Kentucky necessarily needed on this roster this upcoming season. They would have absolutely loved to have had him, I can imagine, but it's not the player, specifically not the defender, that Kentucky currently needs. They've got those options now, especially with Florida transfer Aberdeen in, so I'd love to see him stay regionally. I'd love to see him go somewhere like Western Kentucky, who was in his Final Five coming out of high school. Lipscomb, maybe somewhere in this Kentucky, Tennessee, Ohio area. Maybe come back in a few years. That's kind of the hope that a lot of people have had here on social media. But Perry enters the portal, and frankly, he needed to enter the transfer portal. Kentucky needed to see or needs to let guys like Aberdeen and Jasper and Chandler, I think that is more... It's better for them to kind of throw minutes at those guys and have them try and develop and work out here relative to somebody like Perry, who, again, would have been kind of like the fifth option here. It's better for Perry's development, and I think it's definitely better for Kentucky's roster that they kind of focus on the guys that they have, because the guys that they do have in this backcourt currently are very, very exciting. So does Kentucky add another piece to the roster here with Travis Perry gone? I don't necessarily think that they do, at least specifically try to target a position in his stead or a piece in his stead. And if they do add a piece, it's not necessarily going to move the needle. You could see somebody like Braden Hawthorne come in and play small forward for Kentucky. Obviously, I don't think Hawthorne would be in contention for any legitimate minutes in year one after he took a recent visit to UK. I don't know where else UK could go in the transfer portal right now that would be a guy that would be willing to take on a third or fourth string role on this roster, and they don't need a starter. They don't need a backup. They're set. The most important thing right now is Otega Oweh. I'm going to tell you why he needs to come back here to Kentucky in just a second. Before we do it, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Game Time. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. It's every bucket, every defensive stop, the crowd, the energy, every single moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when the demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. They've got last-minute deals, again, that can save you up to 60%, and you can get tickets for not just sporting events last minute. It's concerts, it's comedy, it's theater. I have used literally nobody else other than Game Time for forever now to get my tickets, because the app is incredibly easy to use. It's got all-in pricing, so you're not fooled as to what exactly you're going to be paying before you get to checkout. It's an incredible app. I've used it for sporting events in and out of state. I've used it for comedy literally 2 or 3 different times here over the last year. I've used it to concerts, Porter Robinson, Post Malone. It is no surprise, and it's super easy to use. Take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time by downloading the Game Time app, creating an account, and using code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, continuing along here on the Tuesday edition of Locked On Kentucky, Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. If you're seeing this on Wednesday, that means I could not get my internet to work in the studio, but nevertheless, we keep it pushing, talking about Travis Perry entering the portal on Tuesday afternoon. I believe that he needed to enter the transfer portal. If you have any thoughts on Travis Perry and this current roster, you can leave them all in the YouTube comments below. At Locked On UK on Twitter is where you can also find me. And then a favor I'd like to ask of you guys, specifically to the ones that are listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you've been listening to this show for any amount of time, especially if you've been listening for a while and you've not left a review on Spotify or on Apple, I would love for you to do so. Preferably, if you could please give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I would greatly appreciate it. It would mean a ton to me. Let me know what you think about the podcast. If you're listening to this one specifically on Spotify, you can't leave written reviews like you can on Apple, but you can leave comments. So let me know if you're listening to this over on Spotify. I would greatly appreciate it. And yes, I do see it, and I thank you guys so much for it. So Travis Perry's gone, Aberdeen in. You're kind of rocking with the 4 or 5 guys that you got there in the backcourt. We'll get to more specifics here later on in the show, but there's one thing that's abundantly clear about the state of Kentucky's backcourt, is that they need Otega Oweh back. If Kentucky decides to rock with their current roster, with Otega Oweh coming back, that's one less piece taking minutes away from what I believe is an All-American caliber player this season. 16.3 points per game in his junior season, in his first season in Lexington. Hopefully, we're able to see him in a second year in Lexington, and here's why he needs to come back. First and foremost, we've already seen him improve in this offense, and I want to pull up his KenPom statistics here real quick, because I really do think they start to shed some light on just how improved he was. over the course of his loan season so far in Lexington, as opposed to his first 2 seasons in Oklahoma. So this past year, he had an offensive rating of 113.6 at Kentucky. In his 2 years at Oklahoma, he had an offensive rating of 87.5 and 102.1. Significantly better. He shot 52.2% from inside the arc and 35.5% from beyond the arc. He's made the most threes that he's ever made in a season in his career, made the most field goals he's ever made in his career. It's his best shooting percentage of his career at 57.7% true shooting percentage. He's utilized the most so far of his career, both on percentage of possessions and percentage of shots taken while he's on the floor. His defensive rebounding percentage is the highest it's ever been. His assist rate is the highest it's ever been. His turnover percentage is the lowest it's ever been by almost 6.5%. His steal percentage is solid. His block percentage is the best it's ever been. Literally his free throw percentage previously was 65% and 64%. It was 77.6% at Kentucky this last year. He got better in every single aspect of his game. He's knocking down threes. He's getting to the rim more effectively. He's got a higher true shooting percentage. He's distributing well. He's not turning the ball over as much. He's getting to the foul line often. One of the best in the SEC at doing that in conference play a season ago. I don't really know, if you're Otega Oweh, what you could be possibly envisioning coming back and playing with this squad other than, I've already seen improvement. Forget what the numbers say. I looked like a better player at this school. There's no way I come back with these new pieces and not take my draft stock a step further, which is the second thing here. With the pieces around Otega Oweh now, I'd argue that he improves a little more, if not substantially more. You could see this kid shoot 38% from 3 on a higher volume. You could see him be more efficient at the rim because of what Kentucky is able to do spacing-wise now that they've got these physical bodies that can screen harder and can be options for Oweh outside of him inside the arc. I think that's a really important thing that we need to focus on here heading into this offseason, is that Kentucky's got guys that can drive and finish outside of Oweh. Thank goodness. It's going to draw attention. Absolutely. Jaden Quaintance is going to draw attention. Yelovich is going to draw attention. So is Diabate. So is Cam Williams. All these guys are. With the pieces around him now, I think he improves. We've already seen him do it. I think he does it again. Kentucky also, third point here, clearly has the money to throw at him. We've seen Kentucky spend what is most likely upwards of $15 million, probably over 20 on their current roster. With Travis Perry out, curious to see if that opens anything up. Maybe you throw that money at Otega now. I don't know. But look, if you're looking at your draft stock and saying, I could be a second-round selection that goes to play in the G League for X amount of money, or I could come back to Kentucky for one more year and make 6 times what I'd make in the G League if I was signing a 2-way contract. Kentucky's got the money to throw at him, and that's enticing as well. The ability to improve and the financial situation being extremely beneficial, or much better, I should say. And it all comes back to this. Another season at Kentucky can only improve where Otega is currently at in his career. Generically speaking, statistically, he's taken a leap. Eye test-wise, he can take a leap. Financially, he can take a leap. Every single arrow points back to Kentucky being the best option. Because right now, Kentucky or Otega Oweh is not a first-round selection. If you're not going to be a first-round guy and you're kind of like a second-round fringe, second-round guy, there's no point. The money's better. The program's better. The love is better. We'd love to see Otega Oweh back in blue and white for one more season. He needs to come back. And now that Perry is gone, it's one less player to take minutes away from what I believe will be an All-American caliber player. All right, I want to talk about the roster in its current state and an announcement, some news that broke a day and a half or so ago. Actually, no, it broke yesterday. Just heartbreak for Kentucky fans for one specific reason. We'll get into that later. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Prize Picks. Baseball season is in full swing, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports, because with Prize Picks, you can pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, Prize Picks keeps the game exciting. This week, I'm picking Aaron Judge for more than 1 home run and Shohei Ohtani for more than 1 stolen base. I think I'm pretty set there, and it's that easy. It's fast and simple. You can set up a lineup in less than 60 seconds, and when you win, your payout is quick, safe, and secure. I always take advantage as well of Taco Tuesday that happened yesterday, where Prize Picks offers discounts on select player projections for even more value. You can download the app today. I encourage you to do so and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Sweet deal. It's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, wrapping up the Tuesday edition, might be Wednesday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. So I wanted to wrap up the show today by taking a look at the roster as a whole. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see a graphic that I'm going to put up here in a second. But I think that's something we're going to talk about over and over and over and over and over again. You're going to hear me beat it to death just as much as I say interesting about things on this podcast, is the positional versatility that Mark Pope has put together here. We talk about positionless basketball. We talk about the modern NBA style system that Pope likes to run. We talk about the tempo. We talk about the Euro influence. We talk about the zoom action. We talk about the 5-man running some stuff. To be honest with you, if you're going to run that crap, and I'm saying crap not negatively, if you're going to run that stuff, this is a really good roster to do it with. Because a lot of guys can tween between positions, play different roles within sets, and keep teams guessing. So I want to take a look here at the roster in its current state, in my opinion. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see this here. If you're listening on podcast, you're just going to have to walk with me. These are the 12 players that are currently on roster. I've got them with their natural position, in my opinion, their secondary position, in my opinion, and their tertiary position. So their third position, if they have one. 6 of these guys don't. 6 of these guys do have a third position they could technically play. All of these guys have some sort of positional versatility. We'll start at the top here. Jalen Lowe, his natural position is going to be point guard. I think that is very obvious. Jalen Lowe is going to play point guard and probably exclusively point for Kentucky. However, his secondary position, in my opinion, would be shooting guard. Kid's 6'3", $175, takes a lot of shots. Yeah, you could put him at shooting guard. Absolutely. And to be honest with you, if you've got him out there and he's off ball, it doesn't necessarily mean that, he's at the 2. He could come get the ball and collect it and run something late in the shot clock. It doesn't really matter. It's positional versatility. If you have somebody like him and Colin Chandler out there as the 1-2 punch, awesome. There's not a true, you don't really know what the true 1 is, especially if Lowe is off ball. It's kind of hard to figure out. The second player here, Jasper Johnson. I think Jasper is, clearly naturally a shooting guard. Left-handed, 6'4", 6'5", lengthy, rangy, some athleticism to boot. Did you guys see, by the way, did you see the dunk that he had the other day where the ball was thrown ahead on a fast break where only he could get it? It bounces in the paint. He catches it off the bounce and dunks it. It was an incredible dunk. Anyway, shooting guard naturally. I think his secondary position is point guard. And this is where you get into the cream of the crop when it comes to versatility. I think Denzel Aberdeen is naturally a shooting guard. If you watch the way that he plays, if you watch the ball handling, if you watch his ability to score, I think he's naturally a great shooting guard that is excellent in spot-up situations. The secondary position, you can argue whether or not his secondary position is small forward or point guard. I think that he could tween between either and look perfectly fine at either because he's 6'5", 6'6". I've got a secondary position at small forward just because that's where Florida played him the most, right? And then his tertiary position is point guard. I think those two, the 3 and the 1 are interchangeable there. Colin Chandler, I think, is another guy that can slide 1 through 3. I think he's naturally a shooting guard, but I think he could play small forward because he's 6'5". He's got some size to him, just like Aberdeen. And I think he can obviously play point. How do we know that? Well, he did it. He did it late in the season for UK. Otega Oweh, I think, is another tweener 1 through 3. I think he could play small forward, shooting guard, and he could play point guard. Why do I think Kentucky could put Otega Oweh at point guard? Well, it's where they had him sparingly towards the end of the season. So go back to KenPom here for a second. If you want to take a look at their most frequent lineups, Kentucky's most frequent lineups over the final 5 games of the season, their 6th most common lineup had Otega at the 1, Noah at the 2, Brea at the 3, Carr at the 4, and Williams at the 5. They ran that lineup 3% of the time. It was their 6th most common lineup. But Otega was the clear-cut 2, or clear-cut 1, because Noah was the 2 and Brea was the 3. I think that he could run a little bit of point. And honestly, in that scenario, your 5 is probably doing a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to point guard duties, a.k.a. distributing the ball. So I think Otega has positional versatility. Cam Williams, absolutely. At 6'8", listed as a guard, played a little bit of shooting guard, played mostly small forward and power forward, though. I think he's naturally a 3. By the way, Otega is naturally a 2, in my opinion. But Cam is naturally a 3 that can play power forward because he's 6'8". And you can slide him up to shooting guard if you have to. Is there going to be a world where Kentucky decides, hey, we're going to put Cam Williams at the 2? I don't necessarily know if that's the case. I don't know if they're going to necessarily have to do that. But I believe that he can, just because he shot so many threes at almost 40% clip during his freshman year. 6'8", $190, can handle the ball a little bit. He's got some athleticism. Yeah, throw him at the 2. Why not? Trent Noah, I think, is another guy that can rotate through 3 spots. Naturally a power or a small forward. Secondarily, if that's even a word, his secondary position's power forward, and his 3rd position is shooting guard. Why is his 3rd position shooting guard? Well, we've already seen it. Mohamed Diabate, I think, has 2 positions. I think he's naturally a power forward because he doesn't take a ton of threes, and he's a bully ball type that's really good at rebounding and creating stuff down low and being a defensive menace. I think that he is a secondary position at a small forward. I think Kentucky will utilize him there a decent amount, but not a ton. I think he's primarily a power forward. I also think Andrea Jelovic is a power forward, naturally, but I think that Jelovic, his secondary position is center at 6'11". And I haven't seen anybody else have this take, but I'm just going to go ahead and tell you guys. I think you could put Jelovic at the 3 at 6'11". With the ability to handle the ball, I don't see why you wouldn't put Jelovic at the 3 in a big defensive lineup. I think that would be your go-to. I think you put Quaintance. I think you put either Mo D, Cam, or who have you, Diabate, and then you put Jelovic at the 3, technically. 3 or 4, depending on what it is. Anyway. So there's Jelovic. Quaintance, I think, is naturally a center, no duh. Secondary position, power forward. Brandon Garrison, naturally a center, in my opinion. But with his ability to shoot, all of a sudden, put him at the 4 in some lineups, like Quaintance Rock at the 5. And honestly, at that point, and by the way, Marino is just a natural center. He's the only player on this roster that I don't think has positional versatility, at least not at this stage in his career. the thing about let's say you have Garrison and Quaintance out there in that rotation, who cares if we put a label on it? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I'm saying, oh, look, you're power forward. You're the 4, Garrison, and Quaintance is the 5. It doesn't matter. You got 2 guys out there that can pass, that can distribute in your offense, and can go and dunk on somebody's head. And one of them can definitely knock down outside shots, especially for his position, impressively for his position. And the other one is trying to develop that aspect of his game. And I love Quaintance doing that. I hope he doesn't shy away from it a ton. I hope Pope gives him opportunities and he's able to capitalize and execute. We'll see. But you run a 2 big lineup. You got somebody down low that can be on the glass, which I think preferably would be Quaintance. But either of them would be great. And then you got another one running stuff at the top who can shoot. That's a hard offense to stop, man. Who cares who's the 5? They got 2 centers out there. And they can run them well because of what this system is. So that's where I think the roster is at currently. That's what I think about Travis Perry. That's what I think about Otega Oweh. The final thing I wanted to talk about today, and this is where I wanted to close the show, is our friend Captain Crash 21 is probably not doing so well right now. In case you didn't see it, Grant Darbyshire has announced that he will enter the transfer portal. It's a shame. I hate it for him. I hate it for the fan base because there's some people on Twitter that seem to genuinely love him for what he was on this team. Best of luck to him wherever he goes. But I figured we'd address it and realize that Captain Crash 21, wherever you're at, hope you're doing great, man. Yes, we are blowing this out of proportion. I think it's funny. Man, you know what? It's not funny. This is no laughing matter. You can follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnUK. You can follow me on Twitter at Lance_, and follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below. You can hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless. If you're looking on YouTube, no, he's not dead. But he might as well be.